Hello and welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining me in another of my wonderful interviews. Now, you remember we were looking at logos the other day with Paul Oldman, and we were looking at and seeing how these logos reveal certain things. Possibly the companies that use them are telling us interesting things about what club they are members of, and as things get on, it could well be revealing things in the future. So this is part two with Paul Oldman, but let's bring him back on. Hello, Paul. How are you doing?
I'm very well. Thanks for having me back again.
It's quite all right. Now, we've had a little chat. Now, obviously, people watching this will go, hold on a minute, you recorded this on the same day, didn't you? This isn't. This is, well, of course, I didn't want to let him go. Otherwise, we may not be able to sort of find the time to do it. So, we're going to do part two. And we're going to start with something called The Beast. But
Okay, so
in
sorry.
part one, if you did, sorry, I just say in part one, if you didn't see that, it's worth looking at that. That's the groundwork of understanding how these logos work. And we should just say this is all opinion. We can't guarantee for sure because, as far as I know, Paul isn't a member of the 33rd degree, and has got the whistleblower's handbook. But he's spent a bit of time decoding all of this. Is that right?
That is right, and basically it's all guesswork. But these things do fall into categories, and all I've tried to do is put them into categories, and then people can kind of draw conclusions for themselves.
I am going to get you to put that pen down because I can hear the clicking on your pen.
Sorry.
'Cause I was wondering what that was in the past record. I was saying, what is that clicking noise? But it's Paul and his clicking pen. That isn't, by the way, a detonator, as far as I know. So I don't know whether this is going to get sort of murky and dark or what have you, but we're on the.
Yeah, it gets a little bit dark, but not as dark as part three. If anyone can make it to part three, and you wish to get to part three, then part three, I think a few things here. I used to be a little bit scared of it, but I'm less scared of its kind of iconography than I used to be, because I think it's kind of actually all about something else. So don't be too scared.
Right. Okay. I will not hide behind the sofa. I will get the screen up so that we can have a look at the first of the slides that you have given us. So we can start with the beast, and I just point out that these are on a PDF, so I'm scrolling them up old-fashioned way.
Okay.
So this is where we left off last time.
So obviously telling you not to be scared, we start with the word the beast, which
Yes, thanks for that.
yeah,
I understand that's a very popular YouTube channel with
is it
millions and
really?
millions of people. Yeah, apparently.
You know, when you see things about logos, that there's quite some common logo themes that based around the beast, which is the beast of Revelation. The 666 thing. They're kind of quite well known. So there's no new ground here, but I wanted to just say, well, here they are, and let's kind of append a few little things into the same group, and then maybe we can then move on to something that's maybe placing in a bit more kind of context, if you know what I mean.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so I think it's quite common knowledge, that there's a lot of kind of 666 symbology in some of these logos. So there's nothing new there. But for those who haven't even seen any of it at all, I thought I'd put them in. So obviously, 666 is the number of the beast in John's Revelation, which is supposedly about looking to the apocalypse and the future. There are some people who think it's actually about things that already happened in the past, and there are some people who think that they've not only happened in the past, but they're cyclical, and therefore they do apply to the future too. Um, and the fact that they kind of appear in some of these logos, modern day logos, you would say, well, if they're in the past, so what? And why would you build them into certain logos and make them so visible? So there's a lot of unpicking to do, and I don't know, but let's have a look. We can see the actual visual shapes
Mm.
have been quite obviously built into these things, and as far as the one on the left is concerned, Google Chrome, you can see the three sixes built in into that logo. So we've got 666. Why? Just for an internet application. Why they would do that, who knows? But like I said before, these are kind of, we've been through the affiliation or allegiance state section of the logos, and this is the kind of reverence. So that the beast is something to be revered in some kind of way, whether you're afraid of it or whatever form it takes. They wish to show it for some reason. I don't know why, but they do. So on the right-hand side, we've got CERN. So we've got, we've still got the thing that we discussed in the first program, which are the 4s and the 3s. But we've also got 3 6s built in. But, when you look at it, that just reflects the actual nature of the how the collider was built. So, they've gone a long way and spent a lot of money to build these things in symbolically into, what they spent a lot of money on. So it must have some kind of relevance.
Gosh.
It's some kind of weird thing for the future. So if we just move on to the next page, our friends at World Economic Forum, miraculously they managed to create 3 little 6s there as well, with the 3 circles and the arc going through them. That's there as well. But one thing you can kind of think of is the circle is a cycle. So that's maybe something worth just kind of sticking in the back of your head. Now, Disney, this is quite a common one. Lots of people, kind of go on about how bad Disney is. And they say, it's got the 666 built into the D, and the dot of the I. And that very peculiar Y. No one I know of, never ever seen a Y that's been done in that way.
Right. Yeah.
So, maybe not, but Disney does have quite a lot of stuff that builds on top of that, which then leads you to believe that this is possible. So they're little things that are kind of built in, little 666s. So if you just move on to the next one. Now, the Monster Energy drink. And so at first sight, that doesn't look like a 666. But what it is a Hebrew Vav, which has a numeric value of 6. So you've got Vav, 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 which is 666. And as I recall, the strapline for the drink when it came out was "Release the Beast," by pure coincidence.
Yes, absolutely. What coincidence is that?
By pure coincidence. And by pure coincidence, the Vav, it does look like a nail. So with the Jesuit IHS logo, they also include the 3 nails that were used to crucify Jesus Christ. So that's a little kind of thing that's thrown in as well, but it's not immediately obvious. Moving on. Now, this is the old National Lottery logo. Now, you think that's kind of fairly, the beast is not going to be in this, but they've changed it in the past few years. But when it first came out, I just wonder whether you can read anything in there. You probably can if you look to the right-hand side, but...
Well, you've got the hand itself makes a 6. And you've got 2 6s of they look like eyes,
Yes.
but they're also fingers.
Yeah.
You've got 3 fingers. The National Lottery's at 3 words in red and blue again.
So got red, white, and blue. Yeah, they've got 2 6s. The third 6 is a bit tricky. You'd have to flip it to get the third 6. But obviously, like I said before, very often things aren't perfect when you're working in kind of drawings and shapes. They don't always work how you want them to work. Sometimes they'll work against you, so you won't be able to achieve everything you want to achieve within a shape. But it's kind of there. I just put that in just for a little, maybe.
Gosh.
If we move on to the next one. Now, this is a kind of stranger one. This is a Beats headphones, which were bought by Apple. which has got its own connotations. But these headphone sets were called Beats. So they've used this, what is quite common, the red colouring and a red circle, and they've got a kind of B for Beats in the middle, which is all fine. There's no trouble there, and it's by Dr. Dre. Now, let's move on to the next. The Dr. Dre element I'll come back to if we move on to the next one. But what we can see is on the left-hand side. So we've got a B, or is it a 6? I don't know. And we've got a red circle or planet there. Okay, maybe. On the right-hand side, though, we've got the name Beats, which you just change it slightly.
And it reads something else.
It reads something else. So we've got a red beast.
Planet, yeah.
Okay.
Gosh.
So the B is 6. Now, when you look at the headphones themselves, they have 2 Bs, one either side for the headset, and one on top. So you have 3 Bs or 3 6s. Now, by Dr. Dre, I mean, this is, is it a reach? I don't know. In a later program, you'll see that the original Egyptian god Set, who was the Lord of Chaos, was later named Typhon by the Greeks. And he was called the Master of Dread. And he was the roarer or the great howler. So if you look through the gods of history, there's been a kind of line that connects different gods in different countries and different cultures. And the problem with these things is that their names have been changed through history. So it's very difficult to kind of get a clear understanding of maybe one thing that's just changed through history. But one thing is clear, is that the god Set was later called Typhon, and he was later called Phoenix. So we have a connection to Phoenix again, which is the 33rd degree, but very much a connection with sound. And it was a sound in the sky and in the heavens. And it was a sound of dread, and it was a sound of roaring, and it was a great howling. So they're little themes just to stick away and see if those themes kind of come up again somewhere else. Okay, pint of lager. So pretty straightforward. We've got the red star.
Yeah.
And we've got the Heineken. Which I can't remember if is it Dutch or Danish? I can't remember. I think it's Dutch, isn't it?
So are you saying the 3 E's could be 3 6s?
Yeah, there we go. On to the next one. This is pretty kind of basic stuff.
We're starting to see it now.
Yeah. But what they're saying is, well, actually, we go on to, right, you moved on. Those 3 6s and a red star. So what they're saying is that the red star is the beast of Revelation. Okay?
Right.
Now, in Revelation, that red star will destroy a third of the world. So that leaves 2/3, which is 66.6%. So the beast of Revelation could be a red star. All right. Now, VW. This one I'll hand over to you. So I want to see what you can see in this, because there's a lot in it.
Right, you've got the V on top of the W in a circle,
Yes.
which could be 2 eyes and a toothy mouth peering at you.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of have a monster's face in there if you wanted to.
Yeah.
A bit like the sort of face that you would put into a Halloween pumpkin.
Yeah.
So I can see that bit. You've got the circle, which is your 3. Yeah. You have 3 elements at the bottom, 3 elements at the bottom, at the top, which would make 3 6s, I suppose, if you looked at it that way. You've got...
How did you get the 3 6s?
Well, I was looking at the 3 elements that make up the 2 eyes and the forehead, and then the 3 teeth, or the smile, which would make 2 lots of 3, and then the circle itself would make another 3.
Yeah.
But that's perhaps really looking for them.
Okay.
But you've got three V's, effectively, W or double V's.
Yep. You're on to it with three V's.
Right, three V's is V is the 20-something letter of the alphabet.
You might have something I haven't looked at there, yeah.
I don't know what letter it is. X, Y, Z. V, W, X, Y, Z. So that would be what, the 21st letter, which makes a 3, if I've got that right. And there are 3 of those. So three. Well, that would, anyway, I don't know.
Who knows?
I'll give up there. Who knows? But you've obviously decoded it far
Well,
better than my
well, I have,
meager effort.
I've put my things onto it, whether it's true or not, I don't know. I mean, obviously, it was called Volkswagen, people's car. So whether they could have possibly called it something else and come up with a different visual on the back of that. But say, for instance, well, it's got to be the Volkswagen, okay. So we've got VW. So that means you can't. There are certain things you can and can't do, because if if you've got to start with a V and a W, you're already down a certain route. So if we just go on to the next page, but if we kind of start to pull it apart, you've got the 3 for a circle, and you've got 4 white bars. Okay. Now you might say, well, maybe not. But what we have got is we've got 3 V's. And V is Vav in Hebrew. So we've got 666. Okay.
Yeah.
What we've also got the genius of this logo, because it does what it says on the tin. It's Volkswagen, but it does other things as well. You've also got the IX and the XI, which is a kind of Roman numeric equivalent of the 911.
Oh yeah.
So at the bottom there, you've got 9 and 11, which I think symbolizes death and destruction, but some people say different. Some people say 11 is chaos. So basically, that in ancient Hebrew, the numbers would have word equivalents. So you could use a number and have a meaning, or use a word and have a numeric meaning. If you know what I mean, they were kind of 2 things that worked in parallel. But the 911 evidently is the number of Azazel. So
He's clicking that pen again.
Sorry, demonic spirit. So who knows? But there are 3 6s in that logo as well, and there was a 9 and 11.
And the pyramids you've got at the top right.
And you've got the 2 great pyramids and the little pyramid as well. So they've stuck a load of stuff in there. If they intentionally did so, who knows?
Right, we're back to this one, which is what, Santander, did you say?
Yeah, and this is called the King of the Pit.
The King of the Pit. Okay.
It's quite a kind of make a good LP, record title or something like that, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Well, the King of the Pit, if we move on to 9/11, Revelation in the King James Bible. And they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon. So in the picture, you can see Apollyon being killed by a Christian. And if you look at his mouth,
you've got flames coming out of his mouth.
Coming out of his mouth, but the flames also come out of as you can see in the bottom left-hand corner, the abyssal fire. So the fire from the abyss is coming out, as in that logo.
And does it have any connection with the word Santander? Does that mean something in and of itself?
I don't know whether it has any meaning. If you look at the founder, I did actually, on a different version of this, have a picture of the founder. He's photographed with the hidden hand, which is essentially a sign, a Masonic sign. But whether Santander itself has any meaning, I don't know.
Okay.
But if you actually look at the logo itself, what does it mean?
On its own?
You've got fire and a hole.
Yeah.
What's that got to do with banking?
Well, when you put your money in, it gets burnt up. Basically, it's not like the old Abbey Habit that it used to be the Abbey National, didn't it?
No, No, indeed.
Right, Alfa Romeo.
Alfa Romeo. So no, we've got a lot of things thrown in here.
We've got George and the Dragon.
We've got George and the Dragon. So let's have a look. Okay, so on the left-hand side, we've got the St. George's Cross, the Red Cross.
Yeah.
Um, so St. George kills the dragon, but that's not quite what's been shown here, is it?
We've got a dragon eating what looks like a man or something
Yes.
with arms or
So,
wings,
so,
and a king above it.
so when the directors in press conference they were asked about this logo, and they said, "Well, why is that dragon or whatever it is eating a man?" And the directors replied, "Why do you? Who said anything about the man being eaten?" So they essentially saying that there's a slightly different meaning there. So if we try and pick it apart, we've got a red cross, red St. George's cross, and a red cross, otherwise known as Ross Tau. So Ross is red. I can't remember if it's Latin or Greek. I can't remember now, or Hebrew actually. So it's Ross and Tau. So red cross is Ross and Tau. So Tau means cross. Ross Tau was the original name for the Giza Plateau. And we've already seen some kind of links to the Great Pyramid already. Okay, we'll put that to one side. The green dragon on the right-hand side. Well, in pictorial language, the dragon and the serpent are often kind of interchangeable. I'd see this as a serpent, and the serpent is symbolic of periods of time. And they usually, if you think about the Ouroboros, which goes around in a circle and the mouth is eating the tail or whatever, that's a closed cycle of time, a recurrent cycle. So we've got a recurrent cycle of time, and we've got either a man being consumed, but what other options are there? Well, it could be being birthed out of the mouth, maybe. I don't know. Or rebirth. What could it be if it's not being consumed? But if you think of the serpent as time,
yes,
then what they're saying there on the right-hand side is a man being birthed from a new period of time, which is a big kind of Masonic kind of theme. What that really means, it's above my pay grade, but there's quite a lot of stuff that kind of points in that direction about creating the new man, whatever that is.
With a bit of transhumanism, you're there.
Exactly. We've got a 3 and a 4 crown thrown in next to the serpent, and around it we've got Alfa Romeo, so it starts at A and it finishes at O for Omega. So we've got loads of bits and bobs thrown in. What that really means, I'm yet to work out what that means really. But if we move on to the next one, something that's very similar is a Mayan picture of Quetzalcoatl. He was called the Feathered Serpent. Now, in this picture, the man is being eaten, quite obviously,
because he's gone in head first.
Because he's gone in head first. Now, you could say, well, in terms of the design, they wanted to show the head, so they just put him around the other way. Well, that's okay. But the dragon obviously is consuming him there. So But what is Quetzalcoatl? Well, he's the feathered serpent, but in that religion, he was a flying sky dragon who consumes men. Now, the Mayans are actually, it might sound kind of ridiculous, but some of this stuff I think is actually really important in terms of some of the symbology. Now, if you look at the central, his kind of shield, middle, you can see a kind of cross there and a kind of little pyramid as well. So if you look on the right-hand side of the picture, I've blown that up, but you can see similar symbology kind of appearing on the Pope's clothing. And those three triangles, which are the three taus, is quite a big thing within Masonic symbolism. It's called the triple tau. I've yet to work out what that means, but I think it goes back to something to do with this red serpent. And the feathered red serpent is feathered because he's a celestial body. So the feathers are the wings, so he's flying. And the serpent is kind of essentially all the debris and stuff that comes off that flying comet or planet. So that's their way of describing essentially what's an astronomical phenomenon, but they're doing it in kind of symbolic iconography, essentially.
Wow, gosh.
Does that sound mad?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it doesn't sound mad if this relates to something that events that might happen in the future, because you mentioned that this is sort of all points towards things that they're telling us, trying to tell us something. They can't sort of just say, here is the BBC News, you're all going to die a horrible agonising death. Thanks very much for watching. I'm now going to sit in the bath with a razor blade. But they seem to be implying that something rather nasty and gruesome is going to happen to man.
Certain parts of the world. I don't want to kind of spoil the next installment where it all will be revealed. So
that's the last slide I've got on this.
That's the last slide of this little section, and I think we'll move on to something that then starts to explain all this, because essentially I've laid a few things out, some kind of patterns that keep coming up, and then really that you then have to start piecing them together. So hopefully people will kind of stick with it, because essentially at the moment it seems quite kind of disparate. But hopefully we can put all these different bits together and start to explain what it's about.
Well, we'll do that on another episode sometime after Christmas, or even in the new year if we're still here. You never know.
You've got plenty of time.
We've got plenty of time. We've got a couple of weeks, so that's all right. Whew. Sharpen up your pencils and stand by the door ready to poke the eyes out of these beasts. In the meantime, it just goes to show you how much, really, I mean, the thing I take away from this in terms of, I suppose, practicality, if anything, is all these major corporations that do seem to be taking over everything seem to be in part of the same club. They all obviously are talking to one another in these secret signs and messages and things to say, yeah, we're with you this. And so that whilst, we all buy from them, well, I say we all do. I mean, we're kind of forced to at the moment, unless we can boycott some of them and as much as you can buy stuff from independents. We are feeding them financially with all our money.
Yeah.
And if we continue to do that, that seems to be suicide.
Yeah, I mean, the one useful thing essentially about the logo element is that, well, maybe you can see who possibly you should or shouldn't buy from. I know it's very difficult. It's very difficult to avoid it, but maybe that's something that's useful in the short term. That if you don't want to help
feed the beast,
then you've got a choice possibly of doing something else, which is a large part of what you communicate in your programs. In terms of where we're going with this, I don't want to kind of spoil it, because in terms of piecing it together now, we've then got something that looks to the future, and it's not all gloom and doom, but I think all I try to do is there are different themes, and there are different themes because all the iconography kind of goes through hundreds and thousands of years, and it changes and it evolves. So it's very difficult just to take one thing out and say, well, oh yes, this means this, because you'll see something in history that might be the same thing, but it's slightly described in a slightly different way and given a different name. But it is the same thing, and that's why there are lots of these different kind of logo themes, but they all do tie together. So if you stick with the third episode, then
yes, well, watch out for that, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll take you even further down into the very bowels of whatever it is that we've just fallen down. In the meantime, thank you so much for coming back, Paul,
That's
in
right.
episode 2 of learning to read symbols and logos.
Yes.
It's been absolutely fascinating. Somewhat amazing. Yeah, look at that. See, I'll be all right. And we'll see you in the new year, and we'll do something on part 3. We'll just keep people sort of on their on their fingertips.
Anyway.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, there we are, ladies and gentlemen. A shorter version today, but you're there as far as I am as well. So we're going to be eager to get to it. Thank you again, Paul.
That's all right.
And we'll see you next year.
Thank you.
Fingers crossed. Until that one, thank you very much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. I'll be back with more monologues and more wonderful guests, of course. Until then, thank you for watching. From Paul and I, goodbye.